Well, in the latest protest outside the climate summit, Extinction Rebellion activists dumped horse manure and staged a mock hanging. Protesters say they're frustrated at the failure of world leaders to take meaningful action against global warming. 12 members of the group stood on melting blocks of ice wearing nooses, and the action was to symbolise the 12 months until the next summit, when the Paris Agreement enters a make-or-break implementation phase. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Tom Burke, who's chairman of the environmental group E3G and a former government advisor on climate change. Thanks very much for coming to talk to us. So one of the organisations in that report there said that the talks were close to collapse. Is it that bad, you think?
I don't think they're close to collapse. I think they're having a very bad time. There's always a device you can always, as it were, stop the clock and roll things forward in any international negotiation if you get into a real logjam. But it's a very bad sign. There's no doubt at all that the NGOs are right to be troubled by the fact that what they're trying to agree at the moment is simply the rule book. It's not really the next steps that have to be taken.
So what is the big area of, what's the big problem area then?
Well, I think that what they've got to do at this round of the summits is to agree the last bits of the rule book by which they're going to implement the agreement. And they're hung up on a couple of fairly technical points to do with the way carbon markets work and to do with who pays for the damage that's going to result from the climate change we're already getting. But I think really that's masking a reluctance on the part of some countries, and they've been named very unusually. They've been named a bit in the discussions, Australia, for instance, Brazil, the United States, for really masking the fact that they don't want to do more on the climate.
And if those countries continue to block it, can the other countries go ahead anyway, or does it? What's the kind of mechanism for continuing? Because presumably you can't sort of turn around and say, well, they're not doing it, so nobody's doing anything, can you?
No, and these agreements, in a sense, work by consensus. So they'll just go on talking as they're doing tonight. They'll just go on talking and coming back and talk again as they make progress. But remember, countries go on doing things anyway, and the real economy is changing as the cost of renewables goes down, the cost of a low-carbon economy is getting lower, now competitive in many parts of the world with the fossil fuel supplies. So it's not that nothing at all happens, it just would happen a lot faster if countries were all moving forward together.
What about carbon offsetting, which people kind of used to talk about as one of kind of the big deals in improving the climate crisis, if you like. But now it seems that environmentalists say actually offsetting is not the answer. You just have to reduce in the first place.
Well, the environmentalists are absolutely right to say the priority is to get things down. But there are some places where if you can get the rules right, and that's what they're arguing about, then there is some advantage, mostly in terms of getting the pace at which we get emissions completely out of the energy system. But the environmentalists are right to say you can't use offsetting as a substitute for real reductions.
So what about the fact that we still seem to be just kind of talking about a rule book? I mean, one might think that Paris was a number of years ago, and we might be at the point of kind of some concrete steps. I mean, it does seem bizarre, doesn't it?
No, I think, no, you're trying to get essentially over 200 countries to agree to harmonise their energy policies. That's quite a difficult thing to do. It's very difficult inside the European Union with all the other advantages there are of working together. So I don't think you should underestimate the difficulty of the task of taking carbon out of the economy. On the other hand, you can't start to underestimate the significance of failure on this case. Now, what's really important about this process is it keeps people aligned and pointing in the same direction. Were the process to collapse, it would be very serious, because then countries would split apart. They wouldn't even be trying to move in the same direction. So it's very frustrating to run into these sort of blocks and to be stopped by things like not agreeing the rules. But you shouldn't think that means that all the change is stopped, because a lot of the change is going on anyway.
Tom Burke, thank you very much indeed. We'll end on an optimistic note. Thank you.